Yeah, you have to have that much through there.
You can glue it to the side of your door on your truck. To glue it to the side of my recycling can. There you go.
All right,
And they
we're
don't have
live.
to buy a new
Ready? All
bronze
right.
plaque.
Call this meeting to order, November 30th. Roll call shows all councilors present. We have a number of guests in the space as well. First thing we will do is we will open up the open forum. If anybody has anything they would like to share with the council at this time that's not on the agenda already, this is the opportunity. So come on up, sit down at the microphone, tell us who you are if you want to. And if you don't, we'll count to 3 and then away we go. 1, 2, 3. Closing the open forum, moving on to the first item on the agenda, consent agenda. Typical 3 items: approval of this meeting's agenda, the approval of the previous meeting minutes, and then the approval of the payment of bills since our last meeting. Unless someone would like to pull something for discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I would second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. All right, so consent agenda is passed. Moving right along to the first thing on our agenda, which is CCLEP office space. So representatives for this conversation, if you want to come up and talk about this, come on up to the microphone. I'll give a brief discussion or brief introduction. For a couple of years, the city has rented space to Soil and Water Conservation District for additional office space. This is the old Visitors Bureau space, right on the other side of the building. And this is a cooperative agreement between Cook County Local Energy Project and Soil and Water who wishes to maintain that space. So tell us who you are, tell us what you're proposing, we can go from there.
Sure. So Stephen Janessi, I'm the district administrator for Cook County Soil and Water. What I want to do today is we did provide a letter of support to the city. I just want to kind of add a few additional words to that and also provide some context into how this potential cooperative agreement came into place. So one of our staff members was having a conversation with Kat just casually one day, and Kat mentioned that it would be very, very useful to their organization to have a physical space here in town. It would be helpful to their operations. That staff member brought that conversation back to our district manager and just brought up the idea of using the space next door here potentially collaboratively with CCLEP. It seemed like a good idea to us because our mission and their mission are closely aligned. They're not overlapping necessarily, but they're certainly supportive of one another. And so we brought that forward to our board. We had some discussion around it at our October meeting. Our Board of Supervisors was generally supportive of the idea as well, assuming that we could just work out some fine details about how we're going to manage some of the costs of the space collaboratively and that sort of a thing. So we brought that back to Kat. She was open to that. And so we did furnish that letter of support. Again, I think that for CCLEP, the kind of support that they provide here in the community would be incredibly useful for them to have a physical space that members of the community could come to. We have been grateful that the city has furnished this space for us. We don't necessarily use it on a daily basis. We do use it, I would say, frequently. We have a very small office in the Soil and Water Conservation District. There's 4 of us in that office, especially since the pandemic. So many things have gone virtual. It's very hard to have 4 virtual meetings going simultaneously in the space that we have right now, so it's really useful to us to occasionally be able to come down here and do some work. And again, we've been enormously appreciative of that, but we don't think it would be any kind of an interruption to our operations to also have CCLEP working within that space. And we think it would be a real benefit to the community. So yeah, we're incredibly supportive, and beyond that, unless anybody has any questions, I'll turn it over to my colleagues here.
Any questions for him? No? All right, thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks very
Yeah.
much.
Thanks so much.
So, I mean, I think that, I don't know, you guys can come up and kind of make your case too if you want, but does the council have any questions for Kat or for Stephen about this proposal? to me, it seems like as long as you guys feel comfortable working out the scheduling conversation so that you understand who's using the space at what time, both of these uses are essentially identical for the space. As far as using it for meeting space, no?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh,
And
Detail.
Chris can elaborate if necessary, but the organizations are different in character, and we won't be able to offer
In kind.
free lease space to CCLEP.
Ah.
So we'll have to come up with another idea to make this work. And one is search for statutory authority to provide a donation to CCLEP of office space, but I don't know that that's going to work. The other is establish a market rate lease. We've already established a market rate on the space, which we could probably use and decide how many square feet they're using. And then maybe perhaps the last detail, something that we need to spend a little more time with them on is there some kind of way we can do an in-kind contract for services where they're providing us with something of value in exchange for the lease. And I don't think there'll be any trouble coming up with a list of stuff that way, because in that sense, CCLEP and Soil and Water are very similar, that we do interact with them a lot, and we do benefit from a lot of the services that they provide. So, but this idea that I thought was going to be really easy, it turns out isn't.
Chris, do you have
Fair enough.
any clarifications on that? Do you see any big potential snafus for working on an in-kind trade on this, or is that?
Well, a lot of things can be done. So it all comes down to how the arrangement is structured. A straight up, a nonprofit corporation come and use our space for free, that's a non-starter, because the city is prohibited from donating, and that would be considered a donation
That makes
of taxpayer dollars for a nonprofit corporation, which we cannot do. There are ways that you can structure it. One way is, as Mike indicated, you can do a contract for services. And so part of that could be a contractual arrangement where the space is provided and CCLEP provides some services to the city that the city needs. So that would be an acceptable arrangement legally. Another possibility, as Mike also stated, is that you lease the space, and it seems like it would be used somewhat infrequently or maybe just periodically by CCLEP. And that, again, I don't know how much space they would use, but do a lease arrangement where where you have some level of market rent that is paid for the space. That also is perfectly legal and acceptable. So those really are the two options for utilization of that space. But it can't just be given to a nonprofit corporation without some consideration.
Okay, that's really helpful.
So I think what
know that one already.
Yeah.
what happens next is that Shane and Kat and I need to sit down and have a conversation and figure out what's going to work for them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Probably useful information for you to hear that conversation from the attorney's mouth. So,
Thank you.
That's helpful
yeah.
and understandable.
And I don't think there'll be any trouble coming up with a list of things you already do that we can say are services that you're providing in exchange.
Yeah.
Yep, and like you said, we've already been down that conversation about the market rent for the space, so that shouldn't be a hard thing to extrapolate numbers from to be able to figure out what value would be.
Do we need to do, short of you having that, is that something then you'll bring back to us?
Yeah.
After that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody have any issue with that? I mean, you don't, I don't. It doesn't sound like anybody else does. Okay.
I think that's probably the best place for us to leave that one at, is to say, yep, council says let's work on it. We'll work with CCLEP to figure out what works best for you, what we can iron out as far as an actual written agreement, and then we can have it back on a probably pretty close to next meeting basis to figure it out. So, Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Sure.
Cool. All right, we'll move forward like that then.
Just one
Yeah.
quick point, based on our prior meeting for the last several hours. Not that I think this is an expectation, but just to say it out loud. This is something we can offer while we're here, but at some point when this situation changes, then that will be there.
And I believe that the agreement with Soil and Water is kind of written with that same expectation.
It is, yeah.
Very much.
And of course, they knew that coming in.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just wanted to say it out loud.
Yep, it's good to have it on the record. So we're good with that, everybody? You guys?
Thank you.
Awesome, yeah, thanks. Sorry we couldn't get some more stuff figured out tonight, but that's kind of the nature of the beast, so to speak. There you go. It's all about putting, there we go, there we go. Before we move on to the next thing, and I feel bad that we didn't bring this up when we were doing consent agenda to add to the agenda. We have Benny here to talk about something. Where would we like to put him?
Oh, he's right now.
He's right now.
He's on the
Great.
agenda.
That's
It's a budget issue.
budget update, perfect.
Yeah,
That
I'm
is,
handing out the paperwork.
I was gonna have him come up and talk
Oh, yeah,
next
budget.
anyway. So
Yeah, I
that's
mean, he-
perfect.
Got slid into there,
Kind
Ben.
enough to-
Yeah, I snuck in here today, I guess.
As long as his pager didn't go
Well,
off.
Right.
Well, he's, yeah, fulfilling other duties. So this, I'm handing out a couple of spreadsheets. You've actually seen this one
Before?
before, but this, there's a change in it. Just look at the cover page. Don't be looking ahead.
Oh, no, I'm looking. Don't worry about me.
Stay on task,
I got this.
Jay.
I got this.
So
This
you've
is
had-
staying on task.
You've had the fire department come in here and talk to you about budget. First, when Aaron came to talk about potential truck purchases, and then next when Ben came to talk about their actual budget issue. And one of the things that was left unfinished was a desire to make some changes to compensation for the firefighters, the paid on call, both officers and the actual firefighters that are answering the calls. So this line item is where that money comes in play. You can see what we've typically spent on an annual basis is kind of a small amount of the budget. That's why when people say volunteer fire department, they really think it basically is. What we pay these folks is $10 per call, and that's not really enough to say we're paying them, but there's also a benefit that you've spent a lot more time talking about when it comes to retirement, that there's a more significant cash value attached to. But we haven't looked at that per call in a while, and we also think that it's time to update the officer pay. So what we're including in this budget and proposing for you to consider is increasing from $10 to $20 per call, and increasing, we have 3 officers, the chief, the assistant chief, and secretary position. The assistant chief and chief are currently making $400 additional for the extra work, and we would like to bump that up to $1,500. And then the secretary is at $100, and we'd like to bump that up to $5. If you want to say anything else about that, please do.
I guess I'd like to thank Mike and Kim, because we've joked about wanting a pay raise for years, but never actually
Done it.
went through and said, hey, this is what we expect or would like. I think for some of our guys with the gas these days and the trucks are driving, $10 to drive to the fire hall and home is
It's a
burning.
losing venture.
burning gas and everything else, that they're actually kind of maybe going backwards sometimes, so it's very much appreciated.
So I guess the only question that I have is this enough? Like,
Yes.
Does this feels good?
I think this is fair. It's comparable. The only other department that's in the county is Lutzen, that actually pays their people at all, and
Okay.
we're right in line with them, which they're a little less busy than we are, but I don't think any of us are in it for the money at all anyway, so.
It's one of the beautiful things about it.
But still.
But still, that's why I asked.
It has over the years. I mean, I've been chief for 13, 14 years now, and it has started to take up with paperwork and just other stuff going on. It has started to take up more time. So,
Yeah, the reason I ask is because, like you're saying, you joke about doing this a lot, but it doesn't get to, get to this level of conversation very often. So for me, I would just as soon address it as a, like, not just getting up to speed, but also like kind of future-proofing this a little bit, and like planning ahead for how often are we going to look at this, how do we keep this more accurate so that we can have a strong volunteer fire department, so that our officers can feel like they're being taken care of at the level that they need to, that sort of a thing. So if you feel good about it, then I think we're good. But also, we could also create some kind of an expectation to review this every year or two, so that we know whether or not we're letting it slide or not.
Would it be worth like tying it to something like inflation or something like that, where we know?
Well,
that
we have to
we're
be
just-
careful on some of
I don't
that
think
stuff.
it needs to be,
It's just-
but if what you really want to know is how do we as a council maintain oversight appropriately on this issue, then right now you have the fire chief report to you annually to talk about the budget, and potentially more than annually to talk about their budget issue. And this is a part of it, and it's something that you can ask about, and it's something that they can bring up, and it's always, every year, an option for you to talk about this.
Okay.
Cool.
So, we want to make that, the payment for the officers, the payment we're going to make them right now. So it's an annual
this year.
payment. And for the calls, we want to start in January.
Okay.
Okay.
My thought is, part of it then, maybe you do this already, but some kind of tracking, like you said, the paperwork's getting to be more like, start keeping track of what is your time really, and what other things are you being asked to do, so the time we get to the end of the year, we can easily say, hey, it feels like I'm doing a lot more, but what is it real, let's kind of measure it and make sure, so we're not
Right.
shortchanging that, what you
Well-
anecdotally know, but we can say, yeah, this is real. There's a lot more to.
I guess we kind of keep
requires.
track of it in our head, but it's not really a set time that we're doing
Right.
things. So we may be taking a phone call or dealing with stuff, for a half hour, 45 minutes throughout the day, or paperwork here or there. So to put a time clock on it.
Well,
is-
there's ways we can find just to help, simple ways just to, like, even if it's a notebook that says, this day I took a phone, just and over time you've kept track.
Because maybe even for you, if you say that 1,500 is fine, maybe like, not to create more work for you, but you might be like, geez, I actually, so when you come back next year, it might be like, yeah, actually, this is, about the amount of time with all the stuff.
Right.
Only for your own, because, obviously going from, what was it, 500 for the chief, and it's going to 1,500, like, that's nice, but that's not, I can only imagine the stuff that you have to keep track of. As far as
Yeah.
trainings, maybe that's the secretary's job, maybe the secretary should get more.
Yeah, Aaron and I split our time really well.
Yeah.
And when I talked to him about this also, he was like, I'm not doing it for the money, so whatever
Yeah.
it is, it is. So,
Right.
that's kind of where I'm at too, but, we can try to keep track and for future reference, for maybe a successor someday to realize exactly how much time it does take.
Maybe you
up.
shouldn't do that, because otherwise you wouldn't have a successor.
Well, there's that too. There's a reason why.
We don't have
why
to
I
show
think-
people just because we keep track.
We'll
That's
keep
right.
that a secret until they agree.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments on this?
Well, if you're feeling good about it, I would ask that you would actually make that official tonight.
Well, that's.
I'll make a motion in support of the pay raise for the 3 top members of the Grand Marais Volunteer Fire Department.
And from
And then
And for
calls.
10 to 20.
10 to 20.
$10.
And 10 to 20 for calls for the
Yeah.
firefighters.
I'll second that.
Yep.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'm assuming, I'm operating on the assumption that this will be an annual conversation.
That's
So
what, Mike just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we'll
we'll
talk
bring it
about
up
it every.
every year. If it's an issue for you or for them, you can talk about it.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else? Hearing no more comment, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right.
All right.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ben.
Mike.
Okay, so next part of the conversation, we're going to keep on the budget
Now
track
you can
here.
flip the page.
But we're going to
This-
talk about liquor store revenues next.
Yeah, liquor store is the next 2 pages of this, and we're talking about expenses first. And Chris is here, really, this is your chance to talk to Chris, period, about the liquor store operations, but you haven't seen this budget before.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
And we do the liquor store budget out of schedule of the other ones because it's a fixed factor in the property tax. We've already decided that we're gonna take a certain portion of the revenues and put them towards the property tax. And so that wasn't something you needed to figure out before September when you have to figure out the rest of the preliminary levy. So we do the liquor store conversation sometime after that, just to have time for the things that you need to talk about. I don't have the same detail about the revenues because you were asked a question about that earlier today, Chris, and it's kind of, I have the same feeling about it. Looking at the line items of where the money is isn't really a useful way to spend your time as a council. But looking at the gross and the trends and the income and those issues, which I've got in a quick chart here and we can dig into if you want, is great. So Chris is here to talk about some issues. We can look at this line item budget if you're curious about how the liquor store money is spent in a year, and then we'll look at kind of a history of revenues and income. Jump on in, Chris.
Where should we start?
Can I just ask a quick question about this graph, and maybe you're gonna explain it?
Yeah,
What's the red?
the red is income. So, net,
Net, okay, thank you.
sorry.
Gross versus net.
But it
Yep.
needs more explanation than that, and I'll get into it.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. So we're looking at, looking line item here, looks like a significant bump for full-time and modest increase for part-time employee salaries. I'm assuming that's driven a little bit by the annual cost of living increase, but it looks like that's a relatively big jump there for full-time. So we
There's an
added a
added
full-time.
full-time
moving
person
someone
as
into
well?
full-time. Perfect. That's kind of what I thought. Otherwise, big numbers that happen there are liquor and beer for resale, and of course the transfer to the general fund. Those are the ones that stick out to me the most. The rest of everything on there seems to be cost of goods sold, more or less. Business expenses and things, which is
And
why.
do you put wine with beer or with liquor in there?
With liquor.
Yeah, so beer is clearly the big one.
Beer is by itself, yep.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any questions on this budget as presented? Honestly, a lot of the increases just look to me like they're inflation increases.
There is a lot of, everything has gone up this year, especially in the last probably 3 months. Pretty substantially. I've raised a lot of prices in the last couple months. Yeah.
This is one of our departments too. It's a business operation, right? And most of our departments, the biggest chunk of the expenses, personnel expenses, but that's not the case here. The biggest chunk is, items for
Product.
resale.
Product
Because that's what we're doing.
Yep.
That's what's going on over there. And there's a little more variability in year-to-year expenses, and then there's also variability in revenues that goes with that, because sales don't stay the same all the time, prices don't stay the same all the time, margins don't stay the same all the time. All that stuff moves around just a little bit. What we try to do is keep the piece of it that's being transferred to the general fund predictable.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you get to the bottom of that first page, there's a $200,000 amount that annually we transfer from the liquor fund to the general fund. And that's built into the expense budgets that you've seen. That's part of the revenues that offset the property tax.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more in here that does the same thing. That's just not called transfer. If you go up to rent, there's a $39,000 payment. And it's the same thing. They're paying the general fund $39,000 to rent space in this building.
Okay.
And so it's really almost $240,000 that's being transferred just automatically from the liquor fund to the general fund every year. When you look at this chart, that's showing gross revenues since 2013, and then in the green line, and then the very small bar is net revenues. And you can see that's not always positive. But even when it's not positive, you know, the 240 isn't included in that number.
Right.
So if there's a small loss, that means we didn't add any more money. We might have reduced a little tiny bit of money in the liquor fund itself.
And it may have been a matter of inventory.
Yeah.
Stuff purchased.
Hold over.
Different sales,
Yep.
sure.
You look at 2016 to 2017, for instance. In 2016, there's a very large amount of net revenue. In 2017, there's this tiny amount of net loss. And that's probably
Hold
a
over.
big part of that story,
Inventory.
is that we really, if you smoothed out those 2 years, it'd be a more accurate picture of what really happened, because there was a fluctuation of inventory as well.
Yep.
Or there was pricing, or we bought something and paid for it at a different time, or sold it at a different time. But you can see that most years, we get the 239, but we also add money to the liquor fund itself. And we're going to use that money pretty soon as an investment in the liquor store itself when we rebuild it. So we were looking at $1 million that we might have to invest in a new liquor store that's actually just funds that the liquor store itself has generated over time.
Yep, and that are being held for that purpose.
Well, they're not for any purpose. You can spend them on anything you want. You can transfer
But we
them all to the general fund
designate.
tomorrow, but you know this is coming,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's your intention.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not
So,
obligated.
this might sound dumb, but just to clarify, on the last page, page 3, where it just has, so the liquor store, parentheses, general, that's like general fund, but then below that's, I mean, it's the same numbers all the way through, right? So when
Right.
we're taking the 200, not the 39 that's paid in rent, but in the 200,
Yes.
every time that happens, that's how this number is growing?
Yes. So we do it on a monthly credit.
Okay, so this, I just want to clarify that the 200, like on the bottom of page 2, transfer to general fund, right, that 200, the addition or total of all those is what we're seeing on that next page.
That's right.
Okay.
And they're the same total.
Yes,
It's a subtotal and a total, but they're the same.
I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that it wasn't like 200 that's going into the general fund, and then there's also this, the extra revenues
Like 2 pots?
are going into another one, so it's really like, well, not only is it chipping in that $200,000, but there's this much money
Right.
sitting in here. That 200 is this money.
It's in that 2.4 million, 2.5 million includes the 240 that's going.
Gotcha.
That's right.
Gotcha.
So we don't necessarily need to have a great detailed revenue budget for something like a liquor store. What we have is a policy that says this is how we mark up our products and an intention to sell as many of them as we can, right? So if these numbers that we've got penciled in here for liquor and beer for resale, like, we'd love them to be much higher than this. And then we know that there's going to be a corresponding revenue gain as well, but they might be lower. And you know, it's just the net that's the difference that we'll be losing.
Well, okay, then, with that in mind, I looked up in the middle section where I saw beer, liquor, other soft drinks. I'm assuming that was your cost of goods sold. That's just your inventory cost, or it's not?
Yes.
The
That-
liquor
that
and beer
is
for
the-
resale,
That's-
251 and 252,
Yeah.
the last 3 numbers,
Oh, and that little grouping in there, there's
that
more,
is what
but
we've spent on.
That's
Yeah,
just the
that's-
wholesale price to purchase the product.
that's
Yeah.
what, yeah, your cost
Yep.
of goods.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. So where is the gross sales line for the year?
Not on the sheet.
That's what okay. I was
Yeah.
hoping, I was like, am I missing this? I don't see
No,
it.
but
What
we're-
is the gross?
So we're looking at it from 2013 to 2021. We don't have it for 2022. We can
Oh, so
certainly,
that's this, on this green one, so that basically, that's what our gross sales are. So since we only have 20, 21, and 22, if we jump to those, well, we can look at 20 and 21 on the other chart,
On the
right?
budget.
this
Yeah.
is also part of the information that's sent out on a monthly basis to you. We have a monthly report that shows the gross expenses and revenues in all the departments. So that's a number that we can send it again to look at if you just want it on the tip of your finger right now, but it's something that comes as the monthlies are done.
One of the things to keep in mind, though, too, as we look at this graph, is to look at the trend. Of course, assuming that 2020 is a bit of an anomaly, looking
Yeah.
at from 2013 to 2021, we have an upward trajectory on this, apart from 2022. And like they mentioned earlier, averaging out the profits on the bottom, got a high year, we got a low year. Again, taking a look at 2020 as being a bit of an outlier, we can expect revenues, like the net, to be relatively consistent, and that the gross is going to be going up.
It's interesting to see that even in the jump from 20 to 21, it wasn't the, like, what you'd been seeing as that growth pattern, but it actually jumped back up to keep in line with
With what
Yeah.
it was
With
before.
2019.
Part of
Yeah.
20's reduction is just a reduction in hours.
Hours.
We were closed for a couple of weeks. We were inconvenient to
more than
use.
Telephone
Weeks.
orders?
Yeah, for a long time.
With two telephones?
We were inconvenient.
You're servicing two people at a time instead of 30 or 40?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that really
You know?
crushed the volume.
Yeah,
When we
we
get to
didn't have a good-
2021.
And no
System.
Canadians.
And in 2021, that's still partially there, which is something to point out. Like, we weren't open on Sundays for that time. We didn't have Canadians coming in regularly for all that time. So there's still meat on that bone too.
Yeah.
That we expect will be in the 23 numbers that weren't in 21 or even all 22.
Depending on the dollar.
So, well, maybe this isn't, that ties back into what we were talking about before, but so if we're paying, the liquor store's paying the city $39,000 a year in rent, do you guys have some sort of, there has to be some correlation to, we mentioned, what's his name, had 20 to 30% sales increases, right? Like as a projected, let's say we cut that in half just to be more modest, 10 to 15%, right? With a new store and potential more product, and not only more product, but we can bulk buy, right? We can
Yeah.
buy more stuff at better
Yeah.
prices at
Yeah.
wholesale costs. Is there must be, like, I also assume if you had a 6,000, or whatever the number was, 6,000 square foot store versus what you have right now, the rent would be up substantially?
It's not important necessarily to get it to be market accurate. It's more important in my mind that all of the money that's transferring makes sense and pays for
I
the
mean,
things
that's
we
what I
want
was
it
trying to understand, is like what
Yeah.
how that, if we're gonna take a chunk out of the fund that's there.
Right.
To do this, like then making sure that how we size things, how we do things, if we're gonna charge them instead of $39,000 a year, $75,000 a year, or whatever it is.
Well,
like-
let's just say it this way, they're making 300 a year,
Yeah, sure.
and they have zero payment towards a new construction.
Yeah.
And when we build a new liquor store, if it's 6,000 square feet of a 14,000 square foot building, it's $2.5 to $3 million of that project that they're gonna be paying for in a capital way, which is, that 300's gone and then some.
Yeah.
So not only have we've used up all of the money that's being transferred just to make the payment, and so the growth on top of that needs to be pretty substantial. Now, thankfully, $1 million of it they've already come up with, right? So now they're only gonna be paying on $2.5 million in debt. So when we've done the budget for this project, we've kind of had those two pieces. What is the amount of cash that they've generated that they can put towards this project? And then what is the amount of revenue annually that they're going to need to pay towards debt? And I think that for sure those first couple of years, I wouldn't assume that there's any growth that's not eaten up completely by payments towards debt.
Yeah.
As we go over, and it might even be a loss at first, but as we go through time, 10 years from now, that 300 number is going to be 450, but that debt payment's going to be the same.
Mhm.
So this is something where we might dip down a little bit, but eventually it's going to pay off big time.
When you say the million, so out of the 2.5, whatever the number is,
2.491?
2.491. So you're
Yeah.
saying we can just take a million of that?
When this is just what we think we're gonna spend next year. So there's three pieces that go into all of our financial reports. The expense part of it,
Yeah.
which is the only one we're looking at now.
Right.
The revenue part, which is the part that's much more exciting and frankly is the much more important part for us. But then the general, just one of the general ledger that's got the cash balances on it. And right now, the liquor fund has north of $1 million saved up in a cash balance that we can use. Now, we're not gonna use every penny of it for this project, because we wanna use some of it just to bounce a little cash flow with the operation. But most of it, as much of it as we can, we're gonna use to pay cash for this project, so that we don't have to borrow as much.
So the question that
That's-
we're, go ahead.
I guess that's what I was, so we don't, this is,
That's just the total of the expenses.
That's the total of the expenses, yeah, that's not the cash that's sitting there waiting. So this, again, on a monthly basis, you've got all three of those pieces, that, how much revenue did we make in the liquor, how much did we spend in the liquor, and how much is the balance of the liquor's funds.
So my question then is the conversation that we're having today, so this is presenting information, what is the question that we're being asked? Are we
Nothing.
being, well, we could be being asked a question, because if we're gonna be looking to the 2023 revenues, which we don't have the 2022 revenues to compare against, then we could be having a conversation about, well, what's the expectation that we have for, the 200,000 plus the $39,000, because that number has kind of gone up and down. Just the rent number, 39,000 is pretty standard, it's been there for a while. But with inflation and also 2022, well, that's just what we've paid thus far.
I don't think
so
it's worth
39.
talking about changing the rent just to make it,
To put money into that reserve fund faster.
well,
But if we're just
it's
talking about
either
one
going
year-
into the reserve fund, or it's going into the general fund. And
It's an
as it-
accounting exercise.
I mean, it basically, yeah, and the way you're using it right now is to decide what the property tax levy needs to be.
Yeah.
And so our assumption is that we're not gonna change the 239 number for 2023 in all the budget numbers that you've looked at. And we can, so if you want that to be the question, we can talk about it, but I would recommend against it, because this project that is hanging over our heads, there's really no point in making big changes to these numbers until we know what the future looks like for this fund.
And it won't affect it next year anyways.
Right.
Right.
There you go.
So that, we're really not coming to ask you for anything, but we just want to spend some time talking about it with you, just as an informational, and a chance for you to talk to Chris if you got anything you want to ask him about.
I do have one question.
Yes.
Just curious if this is past your eyes at all, if anyone's brought this up. I was told that up in the Ely area now, a lot of the merchants are transferring their credit card debt and adding that expense on as a line item. They're passing it back. Have you
I've
heard
heard that's
that?
happening different places now too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how commonplace it is, but yeah, I was just talking to someone in a completely
Different?
different merchant type business. It wasn't a restaurant, it was definitely a retail space.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they were doing the same thing. They were passing, you pay with cash, it's $4.25. You pay with your card, it's $5. Things like that.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was starting to catch on here at all, if other people had heard of it.
I had
And
just heard of that, just in the last couple months. Yeah, so I think it's something that's kind of new and
Yeah, people thinking about it, because it is expensive, and the merchants always bear that cost, and of course it varies depending
Well,
on
and
what
the-
credit card you're
yeah, I mean,
talking
like
about
those
and the
miles
perks it has.
cards
Yeah.
and some of those bonus cards,
Mhm.
they're 7 or 8%.
Very
They're
expensive.
more than American Express is on par with everything else now. But some of those specialty points and miles cards, yeah, we lose way more on those.
Mhm. So I just wondered if that was something to look at, and if you'd heard it spreading at all, or whatever.
Just very recently.
I always found that frustrating, that the everybody gets their fun rewards, but it's always at the expense of the small merchant.
And the merchant is
Yeah.
allowing the credit card company to make all that money off of the, off of credit cards too.
But that something is now a completely automated expense that doesn't have a lot of, real people expense behind it to accomplish.
Right.
There's no real increase to them.
I'll look, like I said, I just heard about it. I'll look into it more. I'm
And-
actually looking at maybe switching credit card companies anyway, so.
Oh, good. Yeah, that was one of my questions, to see
We
whether or
get
not we get.
that up and down all the time.
I believe it.
And sorting through that is just
It's a rat's
Do you-
nest.
and yet,
Same.
every once in a while, you just gotta change, just to keep them honest,
Mhm.
Well, you can't, there's so many cards, the list just goes on, depending on
And we
whatever.
can't even
card.
have the same person do all of the city's transactions because the nature of them are so different. Our utility billing transactions are far different than our liquor store, they're different than our park.
Be interesting to see the
Yeah.
capacity of our point of sale system too, to see if a point of sale system has the capability to do cash price versus credit price.
I'll ask about that. I mean,
I would
It's-
bet.
Percentage. But does a rec park, who processes credit cards for the city? Can you get one processing?
I mean, we
Company
could
to handle,
potentially use the same
liquor
one.
store?
well,
the rec park?
it kind of depends on how they interface with your point of sale system too. Like, we can only use a couple different credit card processors with our point of sale system. That software is supported by those credit card companies, whereas maybe the park is using a different reservation system
Yeah.
that only
Lightspeed.
allows a certain processor to.
When
Well,
you
some
think-
companies will want your business, so they will quote you.
Yeah, but
fee,
they
maybe.
like different types. Like the liquor store's got some variability, but they're all kind of within, $5 to $150, right? You go to the park, and they're much bigger and less often, and then
Transaction.
you go to the utilities, and they're all kind of the same size, and there's not as much margin to
It's
be
the
made.
the swiping fee that gets you every time you swipe.
You can see what's at stake here.
50
In
cents.
'22 so far, we spent just under 70,000 on fees.
Yeah.
That's pretty normal.
So then you gotta turn around and say, okay, I'm either gonna discount this, or because of inflation, because of the cost of goods that you're experiencing, you're forecasting another 200,000 in possible cost of goods for liquor and beer for next year. And that translates into a margin of some kind. I mean, if you do that business, that's what, 80,000 or so?
Oh, yeah, it's
But you-
some
that's
real
profit.
numbers, yeah.
Right. So have you had to go in and take a look at, not that I'm telling you to raise prices or anything like that, but when you start looking at certain things within your budget here going up, do you think that certain items margin-wise need to be tweaked? a
Well,
little bit?
if I
Like,
base
to
my-
absorb that, like, for instance, if you don't give a discount on credit card sales, obviously that's built into your margins.
Right.
But if you gotta come up with another 70,000.
Right.
To avoid those fees.
I mean, I think some of those things are trends too.
Yeah.
Like currently that appears to maybe be the new trend is charging an extra fee for credit cards. If
It's
we,
done quite a bit, but C-stores haven't picked on that yet. A lot of stores are giving a discount for gas if you pay cash.
oh yeah,
They'll give you another 5 or 10 cents. I know Michigan and East Coast is big on that.
Yeah.
10 cents off a gallon if you pay cash. So I mean,
I don't think that you can take everything into account when creating liquor prices. The standard markups are 30% on beer and liquor and 50% on wine. I mean, if propane goes up, we can't raise the,
no, I know.
there's some of those expenses are just tied to the business.
Right. And do the companies give you any, like, buying power? I mean, if there's a special on stuff in liquor, is there ever any
Oh yeah, it's always
just to stock up on certain things?
It's
that you
always
can
bulk
save?
buys, yeah. I mean, I buy 50 cases of Windsor, whatever it's on deal. I buy, anything like that, yeah.
So you can make extra margin doing that.
Yeah, you definitely do.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of the larger storage and the.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's part of our, like right now with our inventory, we've got to buy, like, we'll take Budweiser, for example. So Bud Light, Mick Golden Light, you gotta buy 245 cases to get the same price you got last year on 120. So, you know, you gotta buy a lot more.
Well, we have the ability to do that, that's kind of nice,
Yeah.
so.
And
that
we,
helps out your
we
bottom
go
line
through
at
it,
the
you know,
end
none
of
of
the
it goes bad.
No, yeah.
No.
Sales on beer probably are slower now, but in the summertime, you're definitely gonna go through it.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, the one thing I've written about it a couple times this year is just the amount of disgruntled people around town that we have to wait on and deal with. And I had to trespass someone again the other day. We've had a box of wine thrown at somebody, which you were there to witness. You know,
Wow.
Mike,
Wow.
there's just a lot of, you know, I guess it's our fault when people are having a bad vacation.
Because it's public
The
restrooms.
customer's always right.
Always, always.
Is that because of cost or what?
Just like this person, their kid was walking around picking up bottles and setting them down and going in the back room. And I mean, you break it, you buy it, especially when it's your 5-year-old. I mean, first of all, they can't touch anything in a liquor store. They're
Yeah.
not
Not
21.
supposed to, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of little rules like that that just flip people. You know, their kids carrying their little 6-pack of beer. You're like, you can't carry that in here. I'm sorry. It's the law.
State law.
As soon as they get outside, you can do whatever you want, but while you're in here, you have to, it's just little things like that that we can't, and people just lose it.
Well, and it's not the liquor store, it's all the,
Yeah.
you can go to other businesses, they're all still having these problems. It's not, it's sad that it's everywhere, but it isn't just
It is everywhere.
the liquor stores, so.
No.
I don't think a lot of people know that, though.
Well, I'm glad it was a box, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
a bottle.
I understand younger people in liquor stores and bars, but I think, liquor stores, but I'm just saying, I don't think a lot of older consumers, if they're in a grocery store, for example, and the little kids carrying around a 12-pack of beer and by the cart, I don't think they realize that they're not supposed to be carrying that beer. So, I don't, you know, maybe, would a sign help? I don't know, people need signs, I don't know.
Well-
You could,
But I'm just saying, you know, at
The
least,
only-
at
if
least
you
you
had a-
have it posted.
if
can
you had a
always say,
free
hey.
beer sign that big, they could read that, but you could have
Yeah.
as big of a no-no sign as you want, and they can't read that.
But at least
You
you
know?
can always refer it to them, yeah, so they do know, I mean.
Free beer tomorrow.
Well, and, you know,
Educate.
part of it is just how do you react when you're told something? Do you act like a 5-year-old and throw a hissy fit, or do you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, okay, let
Right.
me just do this and go on about your way"? It's the
Depends if you're on
reaction is.
vacation or not, I think.
Well, and if you're on vacation, you should be even nicer.
I know,
about
right?
it.
Anyway.
But they're not.
You should.
All right, budget.
Alright.
Budget.
One other
numbers.
quick, on the, Mike and I had talked about this last week, just installing another security camera outside so we can capture some more of these things if we've got somebody that's being a jerk or if there is an altercation.
We don't have an outside camera?
We don't. That way we've got a license plate, we've got
Do we have anything on the outside building?
nothing.
We do, but not on that side.
It's in the back,
I mean, do we have
the
anything by
delivery.
the front door?
There's nothing on the
We've
front
got,
side.
we
Like
can
we
see
had
the
a-
front door from the
We had an
inside.
accident where someone slipped on the sidewalk, was that a couple of years ago? I mean, you know, someone
Right.
tripped, or
Yeah.
whatever.
It
There's
would
no
be
camera.
very beneficial to have a
Yeah, so
camera
we're
out
just gonna
there
get one
for
put up.
many, many, many reasons.
Yeah.
From liability reasons, to
Ah.
just seeing what's going on out there, you know, is somebody buying for minors and parking in the car? Is, you know, are they walking right out the door and drinking it right away, which is what Tim Lamb likes to do, and I gotta yell at him all the time for it.
Among other things.
Can you put that in with this current system we have?
That's the plan.
Okay.
It should be simple because it's a,
One more wire and a camera.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't know about, I mean, it's a long way to go wire-wise, but it's just a matter of that. The system we have has room for 4 more cameras, so.
Yeah.
That makes
Should
sense.
be.
just to protect ourselves, I think we need
We'll
to
just- we're just-
Yeah,
protect
so
every
it's up
inch
to
of
that.
our property, you know, whether it's slips and trips.
Right, I think
Or-
that's good for that, and,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
I think it would be a good, yeah, go for that. That sounds good. Does the council think it would be useful to see, like, when the 2022 numbers are more finalized, to be able to see what we're talking about here?
Well, you're gonna, because
Yeah.
again, we show them to you
Yeah.
Right
in a
there.
month.
Is there anything else you think about for advertising or marketing that we could do? Or is there any way where we capture customers' thoughts and opinions about this store and shopping here and what they think about it?
There isn't currently.
There isn't anything more, there isn't anything that you're.
There isn't anything where we're capturing people's.
Even like Google tracking and allowing people to make commentary, I mean, any.
That's
set up?
in there.
Okay,
They're not on Twitter.
Yelp reviews. No, I'm not tweeting. I'm not tweeting the big special of the week out or anything.
yeah, I was gonna say, do we do anything on Facebook or any kind of marketing or sales or any?
Do we
just
need
sort of
to? I mean,
basic-
that's the other question.
Yeah, I think we do. It's.
Oh, no, I mean, I think we should, but there's like a volume issue of like, how many people can you come in and how many, it's like we get a
Yeah.
lot of sales in a
Right.
tiny space.
But if now you gotta buy twice as much Michelob Golden Light in order to get the same price, like.
That's right.
Mhm.
You know,
I mean, something as simple as just a little outside board like they have on the Two Harbors liquor store.
For sales and everything.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
just that little scroll through
Yeah.
box that they got, something
Gotta
like
be
that
careful with
is.
those. We have rules.
Well,
I
wait,
feel like people have found the liquor store a lot better since we moved the sign over there, though.
That was a
That's
great
definitely
suggestion.
improved
Great
things.
suggestion.
But they still drive from Bucks to the liquor store.
They do.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a ways.
I was gonna say, got a lot to load up.
And then over to the co-op.
And then the co-op,
And then they
yeah.
come pay their PUC bill driving. Yeah.
I've done it too, so.
Depends on how cold and wet it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I just, nowadays it's so cheap really to market and to gather customer input than it used to be. And now that we are thinking about changes,
The only
Just-
thing about customer input
yeah.
that's
it's
different in a
open.
place where you sell a lot of stuff is everybody wants their own individual thing.
Oh, what they want, the item.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and I would get a million requests for things that I can't even get procure for them.
Sure.
That's the one, that's not a big thing, but it just sets people up for, then I gotta tell them no, 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 no.
Because you never could, or because you don't have the space or capacity
Because
right
the
now
products don't exist in our area.
for just.
It's a
for-
Minneapolis distillery that just distributes locally and,
Yeah, and you don't have.
Yeah.
So you're gonna drive up and.
they're
drop
not
it
coming
off.
up here with their little van from Dangerous Man to give us beer.
Sure.
They're staying in their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Though we might find out they love it up here, and they would want any
They all
excuse
love it
to
up
come
here.
here.
They're also
I'm
business
just
people.
kidding, but.
They looking at the gas price.
Well, I just always think, especially like I say, we're about to maybe make some serious changes, and are we maybe, or just missing opportunities then to use them as a voice to sell what we have already, just to amplify people's positive comments about what the liquor store has to offer too.
I mean, I think the most logical group to target with any kind of advertising would be Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're always coming through and it's way less expensive here and
start carrying.
you have 100,000 people in a
Maybe
captive
advertise.
audience that all come through this way.
Even
I
just to let
advertised
them.
with that paper up there when I first built.
The Chronicle?
Super America, yeah, and I got a lot of my coupons back.
So did my dad.
From
He
that.
got a lot of people in the bank from,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was worth advertising up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Well,
can try it, if you got something.
You got $6,500 in your advertising budget for 2020.
And it wasn't that expensive either. if you're buying it.
Yeah,
Billboards
Line
before they
items,
get to
it's
the
more of a
border?
Suggestion.
Stretch your dollar a little further if you go.
And there's
Should have a
also,
line
right.
for
Yeah,
that.
Yeah,
that's
that's
true.
true.
like when I first got my store going, it was like, cross advertising, like hooking up with another business in town that's
Mhm.
running something and maybe totally different than you, but yet you share the ad, you put a little blip on with their ad and.
You're like, we're in everybody's hotel room books,
Okay.
for example. That's kind of that same cross-marketing kind of ideal, that, yeah, we're in everybody's books in town that has a little hotel guidebook. And that's not great, but
It's better than nothing. At least they know that you're there.
Well,
They're
yeah,
looking for
I
it.
think that's true, the Canadian, like you said, and even just to say, hey, we're open on Sunday now when you're driving back home.
Yeah.
You can stop
I
on
mean,
your
I
way
never,
back
I never really,
home.
what was Grand Marais when we advertised the city of Grand Marais? You know, like, I know we were very, I mean, with the golf course now, we're starting to get the golf course on some more
It's driving me crazy.
pages to get more visible out there.
It's not
I
me.
mean, maybe we start, you know,
We'll talk about it.
city, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that your
Get
Doors?
the city liquor store.
Your
in
door
the
thing?
city.
I think it's the door thing.
We don't want to talk about it.
The alarm people are coming tomorrow. We have to get new keypads.
Sorry, Craig, we
That's what's
interrupted.
going on there.
Were you hearing
We
the beep,
interrupted
beep, beep,
you.
beep,
I heard
beep,
something
beep,
beep.
beep?
Imagine working over
It's
there.
been doing that all
Yeah.
afternoon.
Right.
There's always some beeping in my head, so.
Any further questions on the liquor store budget? Otherwise, I think we're
We're
sitting pretty for right now.
good.
Was there anything
We're dry
else
now.
you wanted us to?
No.
Awesome.
We're
Well,
excited that you're open on Sundays again.
yeah, for
I
sure.
am too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's important. That was a big,
It's really
that
important.
was kind of a.
It's very important. Yeah,
Number one complaint that I got from the locals was, why aren't we open on Sunday?
because it's so hard to plan
You need a
ahead.
job? 'Cause
We're working on it. No, I mean, I'm just saying. So
I
I'm glad
know.
we are, because I think it's a one negative thing taken off the slate, and it's kind of nice to have that,
Well, whenever you
you know?
start something and you take it away, people always,
Right.
you know.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Thanks, Brad.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everybody.
All right, Mike. So we have one other chart on in our packet. Would you care to
Killed my computer.
go through it?
Thankfully, it's in the packet.
It is in the packet.
So you get, at your next meeting, typically, the last big conversation about budget, because we'll be doing the truth in taxation. And Joyce and Evelyn hopefully will stop by. It sounds like Arrow and Yver aren't coming again, which I'm really disappointed about.
I talked to them about it when I ran home for dinner.
Okay.
They're gonna get some cookies baked.
Yeah, I mean, if they get those little Christmas treats, and then everybody's teeth turned green, and that was been my favorite meeting
Yeah,
ever.
that's Bear's favorite.
Yeah, those were spectacular. But I thought I'd give you a quick preview of where we're at today. Before that meeting, just to give you an idea, some things have changed. There's still some items out there that are variable. We have a conversation hopefully in a couple weeks with the union about a contract, because it's open for next year, but we've had some ideas about that. I won't go into it. We have made changes to most of the line items that are in the spreadsheet that you see, minor changes. The total changes, though, expenses have come down $5,000. So most of that change is additions and subtractions in our assumed number of hours of staff time that people are working in some of these departments, or some insurance numbers that are finalized. Not a lot of real big changes there, you can see. And then the revenue change is, we've increased that by about $13,000. We're talking about $3 million of our budget, where we've managed to change it about $13,000 and $5,000. So not a lot, right? Not a lot has happened. But it doesn't take a lot, because our levy at almost 1.1 million, $18,000 net change is getting close to 2%. With this change, we're just over 4% on next year's increase. So there's one of these pieces I want to talk a little bit about tonight, and then leave you to think about where do we want to be by the time we get to end of December. And that is the rec park revenues. So in September, when you looked at the preliminary budget, the rec park revenues were slated for 1.5 million. And I've decreased that a little bit for this version of the budget to 1.483. They're actually at, right now, 1.46. And they're done for the season. But we're starting next season already. So they're not done making money for the year. I think they might yet get to 1.5 this year. And so they've already agreed to some increases for next year. But when I was looking at this, they were not up close to 1.5. And I thought, let's be a little more conservative right now and just see what that looks like for the budget. That's where that number comes down. Because of that change, that 17 change is almost all of this, net change. Again, we could double this and be under 3% if we put that back to 1.5. So we're at about 4. It could be under 3 just based on that change that's in the draft budget right now.
I can't get to 18 here, so if,
Okay.
if our expenses
Yeah.
all went down,
Yep.
all right, never mind, I just said, when I said out loud, I just answered my own question. Okay, no, I did the introduction.
Great.
Okay, taking that one off.
Happy.
Math.
Yep. So every year, do we include, are you talking about like reservations and incoming dollars for 2023 that they're taking in now?
That they're
Is that
taking
where
in
you were?
now, yeah.
And we
Be
do that every
banked,
year as part of that number?
Well, we bank everything on a monthly basis, and I don't think we're taking money in now that we're gonna hold and credit to next year. I think if we take it in now, it's booked now.
So my question is,
Okay.
we did that last year, we do
We
that year
did.
before, we always do it, yeah. that's all.
Not always, but recently, when we changed to 6-month reservations.
Mhm.
So
And we-
most of history here, it's been January 1st, we start taking reservations. But these past couple of years, it's been 6 months. So there's a little bit in November, a little bit more in December.
Okay.
There's also some monthlies that might come in and pay some of their fees. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some more, but we'll see how November turns out before your next meeting, and then we can have a better conversation about that.
Oh, so this is just through October?
Well, this is just budget, right? This isn't anything, this isn't even the actuals.
This isn't real.
The actuals through October are about 1.46.
Right. Oh, okay. Through October, got it. Thank you.
So that's just a little snapshot. Not a lot of action, but we're getting into that neighborhood, I think, where people are gonna be okay with where the levy's at. And you've got until the end of December to decide, and really, I think you can have a good conversation about it at your meeting in 2 weeks, about where you want to be.
Yep. Well, and I mean, right now, we could have a conversation about where we want to be, but I think it makes more sense to get a little bit more data.
Plus, who knows, maybe you'll get some input,
Well, clearly.
the public hearing.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
I really hope Joyce and Evelyn come by, I've missed them.
So basically what you're saying is this net change of 18,400 puts us at around 4%.
About 4%.
what did we set our preliminary at?
5.15?
It was more than that, I think.
5 point,
Yeah.
I thought it was 5.7.
5.7. Yeah.
That's what I thought it was, 5 point.
Somewhere in
I
there.
think
Yes.
you're right.
remember it was over 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's.
Okay.
Good.
Any other questions on budgetary issues? Hearing none, we'll move on. So the last item that we have here is an amendment to an ordinance that we have for the sale, for brewery off sale. State changed the rule from 64 ounces to 128 ounces, and so the idea is that we would amend our ordinance to reflect that change. Largely, this allows for the breweries to sell 6-packs in addition to growlers on site. So that is the summary for that.
It's been on the to-do list because this change was made at the end of last session. And it's as much about the volume as it is about the type of packaging, because they were required to use specific sizes, and now they can use whatever they typically use, is basically what the law says.
Yep, that's the cumulative.
Yeah. So what we know this will mean is that our one brewery in town, which does have canning equipment, will make cans available for off-sale in their brewery if we make this change. So, I don't know if you remember, one of the things we did a couple years ago was just throw out as an interesting fact, here's the top 5 by product volume, what we're selling, and one of the Voyager 6-packs was on the list. Like, we are their number 1 seller, and we sell a lot of their 6-packs. So, there's a chance that this will affect that, but I actually think it's probably a good thing that it's just where we're gonna build on each other's business, that their business gets better and we do better as well.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Yep, I think that's important to
Well,
bring
they
up.
can't buy 2 six-packs,
Only one.
Yeah.
but they could buy several six-packs from us.
They could.
Yeah.
So,
I would make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-04,
first reading,
first reading.
changes to ordinances, 2 readings.
Cool. I'm still gonna make.
That's the
my
motion. Is there a second for that
I would
motion?
second that
Motion and a
motion.
second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, so we will
You'll
have
see it
this
on your next.
on our
meeting as
next
well.
agenda.
Yeah.
It is time for council and staff reports. Craig, what do you got?
We had trying to think when we fit this in. Public utilities meeting, right, between these?
We did.
Yeah, we did. I already did the rec park one. So we had a public utilities meeting in between these 2 city council meetings, and of course, it's already printed in the Grand Marais paper, but anyway, we ended up, during that meeting, we went through the budget for the electric budget, the water, and the wastewater budget. And basically what came out of that in the water budget, there was a 3% increase in water rates. And just so everybody knows, there was no raise in the water since 2019, 20, 21, and 22. But next year, we're going to see a 3% raise in the water. And then the wastewater budget, there was a 3% increase in wastewater, and that would be the same increase that we did in 21 and 22. And then when we talked about the electric rates, of course, we did see a 15% increase in SIMPA charging us for electrical services going forward into next year. We did do a 3% increase in the electric rates. And the history on that is that there were no raises in the electric rates in 2018 through 22. So I think we're holding the line pretty good on our necessities for our city. And we will be seeing a pretty good chunk of debt revenue debt being released at the end of 2023 out of the electric budget, which will give us some more breathing room. We don't have any big projects planned in the electric part of it right now. I know we did some expensive things this year that we repaired. So that's basically the meeting. Other than we did have a little, Mike gave a little presentation on the open meeting law, rules and regulations, so that was kind of interesting to go through that again.
It's good. Stay fresh on it.
Yeah. That's everything for PUC Commission.
Great. Thanks, Craig. Anton?
So we had an EDA meeting, would have been several weeks ago now. It was a lot easier when it was the Tuesday before our meeting. Now it's been
Long time.
weeks.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Try to remember.
We did, a couple of groups came forward for the EDA to act as the conduit for some IRRR funding. One was the HRA, Jason Hale, and in relation to actually the city's property up there in the Half Moon, in between the inside corner and the Gunflint on that property. We can talk about that next week meeting.
Jason wants to be here.
Okay. Just the land stuff, right? Because that's clarified. Yeah. So that, I don't remember how much that was for, but it was IRRR infrastructure. And there's other funding sources they're obviously looking at too. To help with that, it was kind of interesting to look at he had some total project cost numbers as part of the application, and it was pretty interesting. Although he said he downsized, because I think they had 40 or 60, I don't remember what the total count was, but it was like, the count was substantial, which is good, as far as creating housing.
Mm-hmm.
But the number was also like, that is why it takes this kind of organization to pull that off, because it was nuts. I mean, it was like $14 million or something like that. It's a big number. So, and then the other, North Shore Waste, was there as well, seeking the EDA to act as the conduit for IRRR grant to work on some of their, that pre-construction and infrastructure side of things, to work on their new facility, which, you know, there was a bunch of talk about several months ago, I guess, during the summer. But that's still rolling forward, so that's one path they're going on that. I don't think we actually closed on any lot, or had any other more discussions on lots, but since then, we've got, there's a special meeting, I think because of a typo in the newspaper. There was 2, I think, lot sales that were supposed to be resolved at the meeting a few weeks ago. That's happening now this Friday, and just in the past week, we've gotten 2 more offers on additional lots. So the number is small, like down to 2 or 3, short of some of those. I mean, because even one of them was actually for one of those oddball right on the north side, like accessed off the gun plant, like right there. And I also asked them, since they had to do that special meeting, if they could just do the dog pound lot at that special meeting so that that can move forward, and they said they would. I won't be there, I've got to leave town tomorrow. But
Oh, no, I won't be there either. I was hoping you were going to be there.
I gotta go.
I already talked to Beth about it. I'll just follow up with her again tomorrow,
Maybe
make sure she's
confirm.
ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what other, that's, you know, that's it. We talked about the golf course stuff, but the city doesn't care about that. Oh, Mike cares about it.
No, right.
Rumber rounds, I think they were shooting for like, I think they were gonna come in pretty close to their goal of like 14,000 rounds, if I remember right. They were right there, which is
Sounds
pretty
right.
good.
Yeah, that's good.
I think they actually also applied for, in conjunction with Soil and Water, I believe it was, there's the big, well, spring storms that did so much damage along the
Busted up
Poplar and a bunch
bridges.
other, they had some major, all their bridges were fine, or fixed, but there's just a large area that's falling away, so there's trying to get the funds together to cover that. Basically rehabilitation on the banks of the Poplar there, so that's all I got. I'll probably think of something else, but I got 2 more meetings
That's
to
right.
talk about it.
There you go.
You can always come to open forum after that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, one more thing I was going to tell you guys.
I have my last post-board meeting next week, and that'll be the last one as my service as the mayor, unless you want to take that on. But, just joking. I don't do that. Other than that, lots of community conversations. I've had some conversations with people about the YMCA and how that's working, but nothing outstanding for that. Tracy?
I realized I wasn't at the last meeting. I'm trying to remember dates to this. So you already probably mentioned the Old Shore Road event at Portage, right?
Yes, I think we
Okay.
mentioned that at the last meeting. Yep, it was an
Right.
amazing experience. It was
Mhm.
really cool.
Yeah, very nice. It was very nice. It was nice to see everyone. And
Yeah.
the lunch and the house was very nice. And yeah, whole thing. Okay. Let's see. I just wanted to ask, you guys probably talked about it too and I missed it, but what happened with all the equipment? Did they get the equipment they wanted? They get everything okay?
They did.
Oh, goody.
Been using it.
Did they use the new fire truck in the parade?
Fire truck's not here.
Okay.
No,
I didn't
Street
think-
equipment's here.
I saw the big new Bobcat blowing snow right past my house. So,
All right. What?
Safe routes.
What happened to that planned hotel on the hill? I thought it was supposed to come back.
Oh,
our
it's
way.
coming back.
Is
Next
it?
week.
Okay, so it's still in process.
7th. We got a meeting on the 7th.
December.
Yeah.
That's next week.
That's your planning and zoning
Right, that's
meeting.
7th. Yeah,
Planning
next
and
week.
zoning,
Planning
yeah.
meeting,
I wasn't
yeah.
disagreeing on next week, I was
Yeah.
just being more specific.
Thank you for that.
It's Wednesday the 7th.
Next week.
7th?
What
Okay.
time?
Oh, I
4:30.
see.
No.
No? What time? 4?
5:15.
5:30. Change the time. That's so dumb. I'm gonna quit that board.
No, you're not, but you can't because we appointed you to a citizen term.
You're already committed. Sorry.
Okay, well then I have just one item to bring up. Amanda Weberg has brought this up a few other times, and she's talked to you about it as well, Jay. But one of the things that she would really like us to consider and think about is a plastic bag fee, similar to what you experience now in Duluth. So that's of a lot of interest to her. And I said, well, we won't have a lot of discussion this evening, but I would bring it up and make us all aware of it. And then we'll invite Amanda to a meeting to see where she's at and what she's thinking, and maybe help us some next steps on that if she'd like to pursue that. And
So I have a question about, I don't know, how does that work then? Is that, like, so if we enact that, then the stores charge that, but then where does that money go? To the stores?
To the stores. No?
I don't know all
I think it
that.
goes
I
to
don't
the stores.
remember.
You have to track it, pay it back to,
Well, that's what I'm wondering, do they have to pay it back?
I suspect there's a person who has some answers for you.
Mhm.
Maybe Amanda.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
if you think about it, as far as how many businesses in town still use plastic bags, it's not that many places. So it would be really interesting to see what those numbers are, and also what the process of collecting such a fee would be.
Yeah, because we have talked about it before.
Yep,
This
it's
is
come
our-
up before.
And I think that's really true. I think our businesses were already conscientious of that already. And our grocery stores had made, I think, a really good effort to get reusable bags in front of people. So,
Mhm.
yeah. But just the whole concept, no matter how it plays out, how we achieve it, I think there's a lot of,
It's in line with the climate action plan. It's something to think about.
I think our community in particular would be pretty supportive of it. People with cats and litter boxes may have issues, but. Oh.
You can still use paper bags, just.
No, no. I don't know.
So, there's a heads up on that one, and we'll just,
Cat fee.
when she's ready, and
Yep.
we'll.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Yep.
I'm good.
Michael?
I'm done.
Good? Anybody else?
So Neil and I have been making the rounds. I don't know if you've seen some of the media, local media that's been interested in talking about the wastewater treatment plant, which is terrific.
Awesome.
And the Utilities Commission will be talking with their consulting engineers and looking at some preliminary engineering reports on things to do for and to the plant at their next meeting next week as well.
Cool.
Is there any interviews, or how's that process going for
I
Tom's
think,
replacement?
well, for now, Neil's Tom's replacement.
I know that, but
And we don't have there's no one else being currently considered for it.
is there somebody else to come and help Neil?
Neil's got a lot of resources,
Okay.
yeah, but, it's currently an interim appointment. We're gonna all keep supporting him as much as we can, and we're looking for success here. In the meantime, we're looking, probably having our third person added as early as next week, so hopefully we
Okay.
can come back and say that to you at your meeting as well.
I guess that's
Next
more what I
person.
meant, is like
Yeah.
making sure that they were staffed up.
Staffing.
Yeah. So Zach, who's been working with Neil now for a little while, is up to speed enough where he's able to work weekend shifts on his own, and
Sweet.
that's a big relief. And we also have
Mhm.
other folks that have been stepping up and helping out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Anything else? Did you think of anything?
Kinda, maybe. Just a question. I know that we didn't really have anything to do with this, and maybe that doesn't jive, but, like, I know in Tofty, I guess I thought about it, because, like, while it was snowing the other day, while there was snow, like, I see people, like, that are all walking and doing things on the highway, or, like, back on the highway instead of on the bike trail, because there's snow on there, snow piles and stuff. Not so much in the city limits, because I know those guys try and do that as best they can. But I know, like, in Tofty, somebody goes from Tofty north, at least as far as Lutzen Resort, I guess, or the Poplar River. Is that what they are? The Poplar, whatever those places are called.
Sea
Seaville is.
Villas?
Yeah,
The old original?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
and I guess I just was wondering, who does that? Do you have any
I
idea?
have no idea.
Like, who's in charge? Like, is it the DNR, the state, obviously? You
I
don't-
wouldn't
I doubt it.
necessarily think so.
For a nice neighbor, you mean?
Not that they'd do it.
It might be.
But I'm wondering, if somebody showed up there and scraped the path down, is what I'm wondering, is who would,
Last winter, Chris O'Brien talked to the council, or at least talked to me about the possibility of him and a couple of other community members maintaining the trail from the edge of town down to the Fall River. If, our Gitchigami State Trail,
Yeah.
right down there, that section. And it seemed like, I can check into him, but it seemed like he was running into a lot of issues with liability concerns from the state of operating equipment on their trail,
that's
which
I can only
then would require
imagine.
them to hold their own insurance as a
Yeah.
contractor.
If your question
and
is
not
who,
get paid.
who do I talk to if I want to work on it, I would think the DNR.
that is the DNR?
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's who you talk to.
Right on.
That does lead to another question, though.
See how I did that? Go ahead.
Very good. I noticed driving by over there between Auto and Tire and Subway and all of that, and
Yeah.
we got a lot of snowed-in vehicles again. It felt like a repeat.
Yes.
Where did we land with all of
We're still working on it.
helping to
actively.
find a solution?
Yeah.
Because I just want to make sure I remember part of it right. The state said we can deal with that?
If you want to pass ordinances about it, you can, yes.
Because the state won't be,
They don't make parking rules inside city limits.
okay.
That's up to the city to do.
We can do
And the
that.
only reason that that's not affected is because it isn't on the side streets.
Our ordinances don't specifically address Highway 61, so right now there aren't parking rules.
Yeah.
Not calendar parking, not overnight parking.
Has there been any feedback about how that's been?
Uh,
Like the calendar parking?
I was gonna talk about, I was driving around town today and I was thinking about if we had any,
Yeah.
have we put out a
'Cause I-
reminder to
Yes.
the,
Yep.
okay.
Yep, all that went out. I saw it in multiple places. It's obviously not 100% being followed right now.
Yeah.
But it looks pretty good. And definitely some of the places I go by often, folks have learned over time what they're supposed to do, so it looks good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
The business park's another issue with that. It's
Yeah,
kind of
what happened
similar.
up there?
And I don't know yet, but we're working on that too.
So we need then to include Highway 61 in our plowing and parking issues then, because
Not
the state is
necessarily.
not?
No, they are. They're not going to pass ordinances about it, but I'm not sure that ordinances are what we're going to recommend for solutions yet, so we're not.
Right, but, okay, I'm sorry, since there's some
Yeah.
kind of solution, we need to take control of solutioning this. It's not the state that's going to handle it.
State's definitely not going to handle it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the state that's plowing, as far as plowing goes, so that's a conversation we need to bring those people in to make sure that we're doing what we can to help them plow efficiently.
Yes and no. Our contract with them says that parking lanes are our responsibility, but there's some shared responsibility. And most of the parking lanes are being plowed by others, not by us, by the state. But, if it gets to be a heavy snow year, they're not necessarily going to do that. And it would be completely up to us. The parking issue, though, is completely up to us.
Restate the one about the plowing again, because I didn't track what you were saying.
Let me give you some more information offline about that. Like, I'll show you the contract and the language that's in there. Because it's
Contract with the state.
with the state, yeah. That'll help,
With the plowing,
yeah, with the parking lanes.
Plowing on the
because they
parking
are
lots.
plowing the parking, or you're saying they're not?
Our contract with them suggests there's a shared responsibility there, pretty
Oh.
clearly. And that they wouldn't necessarily plow them at all, but they have been because it's convenient for them to do that, and until there's a lot of snow.
Or a lot of cars.
Or cars, yeah.
Parked there,
Right.
which we would need to address with
It's up to
them.
us.
We need to
To
take-
address, so
Yeah.
that
fact
they
that they
can
never
efficient,
move means
which gets back to my
we need to
original
address
comment was, so they can efficiently plow, we need to help make sure there are,
We need to do our part.
yeah.
And you're saying we shouldn't go for an ordinance yet?
Not yet. Yeah, I mean, we've involved some other folks in this to kind of help, and we're trying to have some conversations with the business community at large too, to talk about it. It's not a problem in other places, and so an ordinance might be too big of a solution because it might create unintended consequences
Right.
in places we don't have problems right now. So we're trying to figure out if there's a more individual solution we could do first.
Well, and when I was thinking of ordinance, I was just thinking of the, one side of the road parking and not the other kind of thing, and no
Yeah.
overnight parking.
Yep, that's what we would be looking
That
at.
might
Yeah.
be a good thing to just kind of run past at WTIP again to make sure people are paying attention to that too.
Oh,
Just having a brief blitz of information out to the community to make sure everybody's remembering odd even parking. So,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I will bring it up in my interview.
Thanks, Jane.
winter has arrived.
It is here,
Mhm.
certainly. Anything else?
2 more meetings, guys, that's it.
That's right.
Better make the most of them.
Oh, we will. You should see all the things I've got planned for the next meeting. Anyway.
Well, I heard it involves cookies.
That's the next one, yeah.
Okay, well, then I'm in.
Okay, we have completed our agenda for the evening. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Bye, Chris.
Bye, Chris.
Have a good night, everybody.
Your foggy
I like your
background is-
background
yeah.
experiment that you were